Tanking in the Elder Scrolls Online is vastly different than any other MMO I've played over the years. Most folks are scared to tank, don't know how exactly to, or what to prioritize. Welcome back, gang. It's Deltia from Deltiasgaming.com, and I'm here to share with you what a tank should know in the Elder Scrolls Online. You'll want to watch this video regardless if you're a tank, healer, DPS, or interested in PvE in general. Tanks can be one of the hardest, most difficult, and thankless jobs, but also one of the most rewarding, as a good tank never lacks a group. Buckle up, future tanks out there. This is what you should know. Number 1 is Taunt Control. Almost everyone watching this video understands MMO tank role is to taunt or control hard-hitting mobs. ESO is unique in that it doesn't have an AoE taunt or a taunt that can hit multiple mobs at once, making it challenging for newer players or someone coming from a different game. In general, you have 3 basic skills for taunting along with some unique gear sets: Pierced Armor from Sword and Shield, Inner Rage from Undaunted, and Destruction Staff Clench ability. I tank enemies based on priority, meaning the most dangerous to the least. My first ability out the gate is a range taunt to make 100% certain the boss or a hard-hitting mob doesn't one-shot and nuke my team. Next, I start working on other lower priority mobs from most dangerous to least. Taunt or pull a bunch of mobs towards you, then once you're surrounding them, lock them in place, as it's nearly impossible to keep up 7 or so taunts on that many mobs. One advantage ESO has in comparison to other MMOs is AoE crowd control effects, especially mobilizations. Something like Choking Talons for the Dragon Knight or Sorcerer and Case, and so on. A workaround to a lack of an AoE taunt is to substitute it with an AoE mobilization. As enemies start to die, it'll get easier to maintain your priority taunt on the boss or a hard-hitting enemy. Another trick I use while tanking is to have one stamina-based resource taunt, like Pierced Armor from Sword and Shield, and another one, magic base, like Inner Rage from Undaunted. That way, no matter what resource I'm low on, I can use the other one to taunt my priority target and prevent my team from dying. Next up is independently staying alive. You can't taunt if you're dead, making our next priority an obvious one. That's staying alive, but with a twist. Staying alive independently of a healer. Yes, you'll typically have a healer in PvE giving you a flood of resources and healing. But if you can survive with self-heals, understanding mechanics, and defensive ultimate, this will free your healer up to provide value-added buffs and debuffs. My tanks typically rely on the Alliance War Assault skill Echoing Vigor for a slow heal over time, with a class burst heal like the Dragon Knight's Drain Dragon's Blood, and a defensive ultimate like the Dragon Knight's Magma Armor. Regardless of the class and playstyle you have as a tank, there'll be a lot of options with many outside weapon, guild, undaunted skill lines, and so forth to pick from. Once I have my basic skill set up for healing and survivability, then I look towards some key numbers to hit, such as physical and spell resistance. You'll want to hit at least 30,000 fully buffed, both physical and spell resistance, with your armor skill active like the Dragon Knight's Hardened Armor. The next stat up we're going to need to hit is health pool. At or around 45,000 is a good benchmark. That way you can eat a couple of big heavy attacks from hard-hitting bosses without dying. Then I prioritize my other stat pool. I play the old school tank Sword and Shield, so I like my stamina to be higher than my magicka, at or around 25,000. And then I put the rest into magicka, whatever's remaining, using tri-stat purple food. The numbers will be much different depending on your racial choices, the amount of champion points, undaunted passives, enchants, and so forth, but the general idea is that. Skills, get something to heal you, burst, and over time with an oh crap ultimate. Gear, hit 45,000 health roughly, 30,000 spell resistance, and physical resistance, then pump up the stats. Next, you want to focus on you as a new tank. So as you're learning to tank and survive independently of a healer, make sure you put the training wheels on. Meaning focus on you, not adding value to the group. You need to be alive, most importantly. Simple example is a two-piece Monster Helm Engine Garden versus Sentinel. EG is great for selfish resource sustain, meaning just you. On the other hand, Sentinel gives a ground-based AoE sustaining tool that can provide group utility, though it lacks mobility. How I approach challenging PvE is the same way I approach challenging PvP. Put the training wheels on. Example is recently learning to clear Veteran Black Rose Prison. I started by using a selfish Engine Guardian two-piece Monster Helm so I could survive independent of the healer. As I learned the mechanics and improved as a player, I ripped off the training wheels and started adding group value sets like Encratis Behemoth or Sentinel so that we could all benefit. Once you get comfortable surviving independently, then you can take your tanking to the next level by running 3 damage dealers in a dungeon and a tank, doing trifecta veteran dungeons and arenas. But start with the basics. Keep mobs taunted and survive. Value added is your next priority. Let's take my Dragonite T3 build, for example, which I'll be coming out with a little bit later. I've completed the newest Veteran Dungeon, Dread Cellar, and Red Petal Bastion, and beaten the hard modes on Red Petal Bastion, and have done Veteran Black Rose Prison, Dragonstar Arena, and so on. What I try to do as a tank is add as much damage per second to my party as possible, making the fights go much faster and thus much simpler. So let me give you an example of this. My friend John and I show this on the public test server by parsing a dummy without any buffs. John, in a normal dungeon setup, using a shield, non-parse food, skills, etc., does 33,000 damage per second with an active combat time of 1 minute and 29 seconds. Value added time, where the tank shines. I will use an Infused Crusher enchant on my front sword and shield, reducing armor, and further reduce the armor via pierced armor from sword and shield, providing major and minor fracture. The result? Over 9,000 more damage per second as John improves to 42,000 DPS with a 1 minute, 9 second active combat time. Let's not stop there. Let's add in 2 buff sets, one with Mire Courage via Yolans adding weapon and spell damage, and another Powerful Assault adding more weapon and spell damage. Let's also add Aggressive Warhorn for increased max stats and more critical damage, and throw on Encratis Behemoth with Engulfing Flame to add more fire-based damage. The result? Another 9,000 more damage per second. We went from the original parse of 33,000 to 51,000. And this is on one player. Imagine the scale in a trial or a dungeon. Value added sets are not limited to spell and weapon damage amps. You can add value via ultimate gain like Drake Rush, or critical damage via Elemental Catalyst. The more coordinated you are between a tank's healers, DPS, the more buffs and debuffs you'll have to optimize DPS, hence why DPS parse on trial dummies are so high. Obvious statement here. The more damage, the easier the game. That is why 3 DPS and 1 tank in Dragonstar Arena Veteran is easy mode, because the mobs barely have time to do mechanics. Tanking with value-added sets is much more advantageous than running 80,000 health, holding block, sitting there AFK, and checking Twitter. If you do check Twitter, check mine. That's not tanking. If you watch my character, I'm constantly using Taunt to reduce armor, Light Attack Weaving to proc my enchant, casting Engulfing Flames to proc Encratis, bar swapping to hit Echoing Vigor to proc Powerful Assault. All that meanwhile, I'm positioning mobs, keeping myself alive, and calling out important mechanics. You add this much to your team, you'll never have to hit Group Finder again. Speaking of positioning, I see many tanks, DPS, and healers having a limited understanding of positioning. Let's take a simple buff like Minor Berserk, provided typically by healers via Restoration Staff Combat Prayer. DPS the dust, as I call it, travels in front of the healer. Anyone hit gains the buff for a limited time. Thus, tank will want to be on one side of the monster or monsters, while the DPS somewhat by each other, and the healer in the very back providing the buff. This isn't always applicable based on mechanics, but a lot of the times it is. The tank's position is also critical due to cleave damage. Your role as a tank is to position the mobs so that their aim is away from the group. Your group role is to stack as tightly as the mechanics allow to provide maximum uptime on buffs. While we are on the topic of positioning, another tip is grabbing all the mobs together, clumping and dumping. Take Aggressive Warhorn as an example of a burst ultimate and a staple in PvE due to increased max stats in major force or critical damage. Ideally, you'll want to use this on very difficult mechanics where speed is key. You'll also want to coordinate with your healer to have the most uptime as possible. Clumping and Dumping means this. The tank's role is to taunt the most important or deadly mob first, working down to the least important. Get them in a group that a big AoE or cleave damage so everything dies at once. Once in position, players buff up, cast their ultimates simultaneously, going nuclear or dropping the house. Whatever vernacular you choose. Either way, burst together. Positioned as many mobs as you can on top of each other. As a tank, you need to constantly think, how can I stack more mobs on top of each other? Take an archer, for instance, something that cannot be pulled or chains in. Sure, you can taunt them, but their range of 28 meters for their abilities means they will not come towards you, like your typical melee mob. Workaround, simply taunt and run away from the mob so it has to chase you. Reposition in the middle with the melee chasing you on top of the range mob, now clump and dump. This is much more advantageous than single targeting the range mob down while the melee is beating on you, then kill the range and switch back to the melee. See how much more there is to think about when tanking? Lastly, don't be afraid to screw up and try hard content. News for you here. Everyone screws up. Everyone dies repeatedly learning mechanics. It's expected. When you do uncomfortable things, you learn. So let me share a personal example of this. I was streaming Castlethorn hard mode dungeon my first time, and when our healer would die, I wasn't able to follow my number 2 priority, which is staying alive independently of a healer. I wasn't doing enough healing for myself and eventually wiped our team. However, chat suggested I swap out an ability for Green Dragon's Blood for the passive and active healing components. Could I have just skipped the hard mode and finished the dungeon and moved on? Sure, but failing over and over eventually evolved my build. I learned thanks to chat. My build got better, I got better, and we all learned and got better. I didn't quit, I didn't give up, I didn't get salty, I got uncomfortable. There will be many times in this game or life where that will be the case, but remember this, no one grows in a comfort zone. If you really want to challenge yourself and evolve and continue to look for harder and harder content, push yourself. Ask for suggestions and feedback from fellow tanks and content creators. After all, this is a game. It's for entertainment purposes, but you'll need to evolve and learn if you want to conquer the hardest content ESO has to offer. Because believe me, there's some ultra hard stuff out there. Tanking in the Elder Scrolls Online is rewarding, fun, exciting, and more complex than most people think. With the lack of an AoE taunt, but the ability to self-heal, you'll have unique challenges and opportunities. This is a brief overview of some things you'll need to think about as a tank. As you progress on tanking, you continue to add value to your group and take pride in your role. Not everyone is cut out to be a DPS, and that's okay. So if it's not a good fit for you, pick up a tank and hopefully you learn something from this video. I'd like to thank my Patreons for sponsoring this video, and if you'd like to be featured in future end credits, link in the description below. Thanks for watching.